Hello students, today we will discuss about the poem The Election and the poet Sitakant Mahapatra. One of the major voices in contemporary Oriya poetry, Sitakant Mahapatra was born in 1937. He combines the role of academician, translator, poet and critic. Much of his work is marked by simplicity of language and themes and emphasizes the necessity of life to go on in the face of cruelty and death. He raises the age old human quest for a measure of understanding which can confer some degree of peace in his poems. He is an acclaimed Oriya poet and critic who is at his best while portraying the ethos of Orisan tradition. His is one of the best known names in Indian literature today. The people of Orissa appear in his poetry as a compassionate, simple, and innocent community. Mahapatra's scholarly contribution on the little traditions of tribal societies testify to his range of interest and erudition. He has held many prestigious positions, including those of Secretary, Culture, Government of India, President, UNESCO World Decade for Cultural Development, Senior Fellow of Harvard University, and Honorary Fellow of International Academy of Poets, Cambridge University, Chairman of National Book Trust, New Delhi. He is also the recipient of many awards, including the Gyanpith Award in 1993, Sarla Award in 1985, Orissa Sahitya Akademi Award in 1971 and 1984, and Sahitya Akademi Award in 1974, an award of the highest honor by Soka University of Tokyo in 2001. Among his works are Ashtapadi in 1963, Shabdra Aksha 1971, Ara Drushya in 1981, Shrestha Kavita in 1994, Sabda Swapna or Nirvikta Essays in 1990, Aneka Sarata, it's a travelogue, it was written in 1981, Usha Vilasa in 1996, Palm Leaf Manuscript. In English, The Ruined Temple and Other Poems, Poetry Translation, and Unending Rhythms, Oral Poetry of Indian Tribals in Translation. His poem, The Election, creates an almost surreal picture, juxtaposing private agonies and the trapping, both material objects and emotions, of an election. The poverty and hunger which ravages the villages of Orissa, causing starvation, deaths, is the background to be kept in mind while reading this poem. But in spite of the despair which pervades the life of the poor villagers, their duty as citizens is inescapable. When it is time for the election, they have to exercise the anguish of choice, unmindful of their grief and agony. Set against the poverty of the village is the electioneering group. Their attempts at finding the common will, their dark longings, and their will to power. The power of the poem comes from the poet's careful negotiation between both sets of people. Mahapatra does not represent the electioneering group as blind, careless individuals, since the poverty and misery of the villager is represented through the eyes of the campaigners, thus signifying their recognition of the torment of the masses. Simultaneously, the irony of the great persuaders points to the chasm which exists between the two groups. The bleakness of the entire poem is reiterated and underscored in the last stanza, where the choices are spelled out. They are not really choices at all. Even the villagers understand and accept their own reality. One composed of starvation, death, and acute want, they also comprehend the agenda of the politicians, one which will not be necessarily benefit them. But their choice is already made for them. By selling their votes, they might be able to satisfy some of their daily needs. The Election, composed by Dr. Sitakant Mahapatra. The poem was originally written in Oriya and then translated into English by the poet himself. Dr. Mahapatra is one of the major Oriya poets. He is a versatile genius who combines in him the roles of an academician, researcher, administrator, translator, poet, and critic. He undertook an extensive field study of the Santal area in Mayurbhanj district of Orissa for research on the Santals, which is one of the major tribal communities in our country. The people of Orissa appear in his poetry as a compassionate, simple, and innocent community. The villages of Orissa are ravaged by poverty and hunger, which cause starvation deaths. In many parts of the country, villagers are poverty stricken. They suffer from hunger and starvation deaths also take place in villages. The poet is talking about the deplorable condition of villagers in Orissa. However, at the time of election, they exercise their right to vote in spite of the despair in their lives. They cast their votes thinking it to be their duty as citizens. They have hardly any choice. It is an anguish of choice. The poet described the scene of the election campaign in the rural area. The vehicle used for this campaign is a jeep that creeps slowly in the village in order to secure the will of the people. The hidden desires of the electioneers on their nets of posters, symbols, speeches, and pamphlets do not touch the private, mental, and physical suffering of people. The grief of the poor and hungry people lives beyond any ruler. Government or empires may come or go, but their poverty and hunger, starvation, deaths, and sorrows go on forever. However, the poor condition of the people is not improved by electioneering. The villagers of Orissa are poor, hungry, and suffer from all kinds of miseries. Electioneering people who reach the village for election campaign are not blind or careless. The poverty and misery of the villagers are reflected through their eyes. It means that they are aware of the torment of the masses. The poor people have no choice. It is only the choice of anguish. The villagers realize that they are suffering from acute want and starvation. Yet they fully understand the agenda of the politicians. Their agenda is not to eradicate their poverty. The village voters have already made their choices. They will sell their votes so they may satisfy some of their daily needs for some time. The electioneers gave to cold grandchildren some cheap plastic articles, cheaper nylon and dark sunglasses to save their eyes from hot rays of the sun. But they are not get rid from their poverty. Thank you. In the next class, we will discuss the line by line explanation of the poem.